Good morning. This morning we're going to pick up where we left off last week. Last week we drew the aprons, put the tenons on the aprons, and made the mortises in the legs to receive them. And I'll just quickly show that to you. Using the X-ray tool, you can see the tenons, and I guess you'll have to assume there's mortises there. So this week what we want to do, we'll go as far as we can, but primarily what we want to accomplish is put the sides on and put the dovetails in the sides. If we can finish the top, that'd be great. Okay, so let's just start with first of all, the tabletop here. We need a top on this structure. So I'll start with the rectangle tool. And start on that corner, go to this corner. Now I want the top to overhang the legs by about 3/4 of an inch. So the perfect tool for that is the offset tool. I have to zoom in here. There we go. There we go. I'm going to bring it out 3/4 of an inch. Now I can get rid of the inside rectangle. Just click on it twice and it chooses the face plus its perimeter, and I hit delete. And now I can bring this rectangle or this face up 1 inch. I'm going to make this tabletop 1 inch thick. And so right now I can make it a component. And for the moment, I'm just going to call it top. And let's might as well put the trim on while we're at it. I'm going to choose, draw a line between the center points of the top from the bottom to the top, and bring them out along the green 1 inch, down along the blue 1 inch, back in. That gives me a surface to work with. Now I can take my, let's try the arc tool. Half circle right there. What I did there was I started at this center point and went out along the green axis until it said half circle. Now I can get rid of this. Okay, now I once more want to choose a face. I can't choose this face here because it'll choose the whole top. What I want to do is create a face on the top. Now I can choose that face. Use the follow me tool. And I have trim. I have to choose that face and get rid of it. And for the moment I'm just going to make this trim a component. I'll just call it trim. Now we need to put the sides in the front and back on. We're going to use this same trick with the offset tool. I'm going to start this time with this rectangle that starts right there, that intersection, goes to the opposite corner. That should give me a face. And now I can take my offset tool. This time I'm going to bring it in 3/4 of an inch. And I'll get rid of this outside face and outside periphery. And I'm left only with this one. Now, what I'm going to do, well, my side's to be 3/4 of an inch. So I'm going to bring a parallel line here, 3/4 of an inch. And with the pencil tool, I'll draw this. Bring this up 14 inches. For the moment, I'm going to erase that and this. I'm going to make this a front. Actually, I'm going to call it front back, front/back, and you'll see why in a moment. I'm having trouble with the keyboard this morning. And I'm going to place move a copy of this. I'm going to use the Move Copy tool. Put it on this point right here. I'm going to flip it along green. And move it back so it's on that line. There we go. The Rotate tool, and move that 15 degrees. And I'll do the same to the back. Notice, let me do that over. Notice the point I picked. I picked this front point right here, front end point right here. That's important because I want to pivot along that edge. So I've got to choose this same point back here. Whoops. (15 degrees). Now I'm going to bring these, I'm going to go into edit component mode. I'm going to bring these ends out. I'm going to bring them out an exaggerated amount. I'm going to say 6 inches. That's much more than enough. I'm going to go around to the other end and also bring it out 6 inches. Much more than enough. All right, now that I've got those, I'm going to put them on their own layer. I'm going to create a layer here called front back. You know what I'll do is I'll put them on a layer called sides. And in fact, if I bring up the entity info box here, I'm going to change their name. I'm going to change it from front back to sides. And I'll put them on the sides layer. There we go. And now get rid of the sides, because I want to do the same thing to create the ends. And I'll go offline here for a moment and do exactly the same thing to create the ends. Okay, I'm back, and I've created the ends. And just to show you now what we're attempting to do, I'm going to bring the sides on. You notice the reason I extended these 6 inches was because I'm going to want to use where they intersect here to shape the ends. But before I do that, I've got another problem. Let me just get rid of the sides to show you. I rotated both the sides and ends 15 degrees along their outside edge. You notice what that did is it kept the outside edge on the tabletop, but the inside edge is lifted. That's true both ends here. And if I were to bring the sides in, you would see the same problem, only it would be the outside edge along the sides would be touching the top, and the inside edge would be lifted. Well, I'm going to correct for that right now. And by the way, this end here is going to be a throwaway because of the nature of these tilted things, and I'll show you in a moment. So let's go into edit component mode. Okay, the first thing I want to do is I want to look at this from the front. And notice, because I tilted things 15 degrees, that this edge is now above horizontal. Well, to fix that, I'm simply going to take let's do it this way. Let's use the rotate, or the compass tool rather. And make a 15 degree. Now we can use the pencil tool. And now with the push-pull, I can trim that off, much like I would do on the table saw. Down here I've got a similar problem. So again, I'll use the protractor. Come down 15 degrees. And this time I have to add a line from here to here and then over to here. Now I've got a face, and I'm going to extend that face all the way to the end. I have some lines I have to get rid of. First, that one right there. And while you can't see it, there's one there. And one on the other end. This was because of how I added that little piece. I want to get rid of that one too. Okay. Get rid of my guidelines. Look at things from the, well, I can get out of here. Look at things from the front. And everything's fine on this end. But this end, not so much. That's okay. For now, we'll just leave that there. No, let's replace it. Let's replace it. What I'll do before I replace it, I'll put my guide down. Right there, 3/4 of an inch. Let's get rid of this one. I think the easiest way to do this, select this, use the Move Copy tool, move the center line here, along the red axis until it's on that line. And then I'm going to use the Rotate tool. Hold the Shift key down, find that center again. Come out here. Type 180. Let's see if that did it. That looks pretty good. There we go. Now we'll delete the guides. Okay, now I'm going to do the same thing to the end, or to the sides. So I'm going to go offline again and do that instead of wasting on camera time. And I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back. We got everything fixed, and if we just examine this a little bit, we'll see that things sit nicely now. All the edges meet up here, and we're ready to give our ends shape. Now there's a couple of ways I could do this. One is I could use the Edit Intersect Faces tool, but that will be a little sloppy because if I, for instance, used an Edit Intersect Faces on this end here, I'd get geometry on both the inside of this side copied onto the end, and also over here copied onto the end. So I'm not going to use the Intersect Faces tool. Instead, I'm simply going to go into Edit Component for the end and bring back the rest of the model. And I'm going to use the pencil tool to give me the lines I want. Get that intersection, that intersection, and I'll come around here, do the same. The Intersect Faces tool is pretty powerful, but I avoid it when I can. There's almost always cleanup, and in this case, not so much cleanup as extra lines that you have to deal with. This is just as easy. Now, if I look at this from the left end, and use the Select tool in this fashion, I think I'll be lucky. Now let's see what I've got. And exit Edit Component. I seem to be missing something here. I'm not sure why. Not sure what happened here. Oh, yes. I know what happened. I lost the line around the top and bottom. We'll have to put those back in. And that was because of the way I Well, let me just back up and show you what happened there. See if I have all my lines. Did I not get this line? Let's just put it in here. All right, let's one more time make sure I have all my lines. Ah. I do want that line. I want that line. I want that line. I don't want that line. I don't know, maybe that was the problem. I don't want that line. I do want that line. I do want that line. I don't want that line. Okay. Now here's the problem that I created before. If I look at this from the left end and use my select tool, well, notice I didn't have lines here, which I need to put in. I'm probably going to convince myself the Intersect Faces tool may have been a good choice. Let's get rid of the bottom, or the top actually. Not sure why I don't see that one so well, but it's there. Now I need this one. Okay, now if I go to the left end and do my thing again, it should be okay. That looks much better. And I have it fixed down at the other end too. So now I'll do the same thing to the front. Go into edit component mode. This time I'll be a little smarter. Put all my lines in. I'll even start with this one. There. 4 lines, that should have done it. Go to the other end. last line. I look at this from the front. I can use my select tool. And again, use my select tool. Exit. It looks like I've got exactly what I want. Now notice I overlap these ends because that's where the tails and the pins are going to go. And so now it's time to do the tails and pins. The question is, are you a pins first or a tails first guy? Well, I'm going to draw the pins first here. And the reason I'm going to do that is because I can avoid having angled pins if I do that. If I draw the tails first, then the pins are going to come out and slope down. And that's kind of cute. May even look good, but it's going to be harder to cut. So I think I'll do the pins first. To do that, let me get rid of, well, let's just go into edit component mode here. Hide rest of model. And let me look at this from the front. Okay, what I'm going to want up top is a half pin. And on the bottom, I'm going to want a half pin. Now the half pin up top, let's start with that. What I'll do is I'll bring this down. Bring it down. Oh, let's say a ½ inch. And let's bring this one up a ½ inch. And let me just do a little arithmetic here. Okay, I did a little calculation off screen, and let me tell you what I come up with. First of all, I'm looking at this from the front, just so you can see what that means. Let me rotate it. That's my end piece. And I'm going to put the pins here. So I'm going to look at this from the front. When I look at it from the front, I'm not actually looking, well, let me say, you can see this front edge slopes in. So when I look at it from the front view, this bottom edge is sloping away from me. Okay, so let's start out. This is a half pin. This is a half pin. Between them, I want 8 tails. And of course, if I have 8 tails, between those tails are going to be 7 pins. What I'd like to do is calculate what I'm going to call a cycle. That is, a tail and a pin is a cycle. Tail and a pin, cycle. Tail and a pin, cycle. But I've got 8 pins and 7 tails. That's not an even number. Well, if I make my pins 1/4 inch, what I can do is I can correct for that and use a trick. Let me show you what I mean. I'm going to use the tape measure tool, zoom in here, and put down a guide point. I'm going to start at that intersection right there. I'm going to come up along the edge. I got to be on the edge, To make sure I am, I'm going to start at that point right there. And I'm going to type 0.25. And now I've got a guide point here. This represents the 8th pin. So now, between this line and this line, I can have 8 tails, 7 pins, and an extra pin up here. That's 8 and 8. 8 tails, 8 pins. Knowing that, I can take my line tool, start at that guide point, come down to this point. What I've done now is created a line that extends between these two guidelines, but overshoots this one by 1 pin. So now I got room. If I subtract that one, I've got 7 tails in here, and I'm sorry, 8 tails in here and 7 pins. Well, I'm not going to divide that line. I'm not going to, do mental arithmetic to divide that line. Look how long this line is. Approximately 13 43/64. If you want to divide that by 8, go ahead. I don't. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select this line, right click, say divide, and I'm going to type 8, enter. What I've got now is I've got 8 separate lines. The last one, by the way, extends over this line by 1/4 of an inch. So I know my last tail is going to end right there. My first tail is going to start here. So let's draw in the tails. Okay, I'm going to take my protractor tool, hold it over the end so I get the black protractor, and that takes the plane of the slope of that edge. And I'll come down here, go to a perpendicular here, and come up 8 degrees. I'm going to do the same here. And no, I don't want to do the same there. What I want to do is, first of all, use my tape measure tool again. Remember, this cycle includes a pin. So I'm going to subtract that pin out of there. I'm going to go to that and type 0.25. That's the width of a pin. So notice what it did is it put a guide point 1/4 of an inch from the end of this line. Now I can use my protractor. Come down 8 degrees. All right, now I have my first tail. I'm going to construct it here. I believe I can get rid of my guides at this point. I'm pretty sure. Let me see. Okay. Now notice, if I go along this edge up from here, there's a midpoint, there's an end point. What I want to do is select this line, add this line to it. Now I'm going to copy those, starting at this point right here, the low point. I'm going to slide up. That's the midpoint. That's the end point. I'm going to place it there. My mistake. My mistake. My mistake. Where I want to place it is not there. I want to place it at that guide point that I erased. All right, let me get that back. There's my endpoint. That's the endpoint I wanted to go to. Select that line. Select that line. Control key. There's the endpoint I want. And now I want to type 7x. Enter. Notice what that did up here is it put my last tail right in that point, which is what I wanted. Now I can delete my guide points and guidelines. Notice my half pin down here and my half pin up here is slightly different shape, and that's because of the beveling of this. Now, what I'd like to be able to do is just push-pull these in a ½ inch. You're going to see I'm not going to be able to do that. Let's first of all create a ½ inch line. I want to make sure I'm on that face, so I'm going to choose that center point up there. And I'm going to type 0.5. I'm sorry, 0.75. These boards are 3/4 of an inch thick. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. There we go. Okay, now it would be nice if I could, for instance, choose that tail, move it back to this line. But I can't quite do that. Look what happens. I've got some protrusion there, and I've got some leftover here. And the reason for that is because, again, every place we look, when you use the move tool, what it does is it moves a face along a vector that is normal to that face. But everything about these surfaces are at an angle. They're not rectilinear. So using the push-pull tool is impossible. Let's back up. What we're going to have to do is the hard work of creating a bunch of lines. The easiest way to do that is to let the Inference Engine do most of the work. I'm going to start at this point, come out here along the green, click, then I'm going to come up here to this point and kind of move it over till I see the green line and on line, and then create that line. I'll do it again. Click. Pick up a suggestion here for the Inference Engine. And unfortunately, I've got to do this on both sides, and even then I'm not done. I'm only going to do one. Oops, shouldn't have done that. Again, I shouldn't have done that. These repetitious things don't work out so well. Again, they don't work out so well. I'm not a big fan of repetition. Well, maybe I'm a big fan of repetition, but I'm not good at it. Now I have to do that to the other side too. I'm going to go offline and do that. All right. So I'm going to go offline and do this. I'll be right back. I'm back. And what would be nice is if we could take the eraser tool now and just erase these two lines. But notice when I do, I've got lines I've got to connect here. And I'll connect a couple of them, then I'll go offline and do the rest. So I just start here, here. When I do that, I get a face. Well, there we go. I got my first tail socket. And I'm going to do one more to show you I can get the pin. There we go. We have a pin, end pin, pin. I'm going to finish this up, and then I'm going to use a little trick. Well, maybe I'll come back to show you the trick. Okay, I'll be right back. Now, while I was offline, I finished this up, brought the sides in. I took this component with it and made a copy, moved it along the green axis, and then flipped it along green. And then I just connected them here. And notice if I look at this from the end, and get my sides out of there, there you go. Notice they're the same, only flipped. Well, it would be nice, by the way, what you're seeing right there is the other end one that doesn't have, there you go. It's the other end, it doesn't have the fixes, or it doesn't have the pins on it yet. So now, in our traditional way of doing things, what we would do is take this component, move it over here, so the pins are over here, and then make one of them exploded, and use faces, intersect faces with selection. And then we'd use the push-pull tool to push the ends in. Well, the push-pull tool doesn't work. And I don't want to go through all that work that we did before. So here's what I'm going to do in this case. I'm going to go into Edit Component mode. I'm going to find the center of this thing. One more in the bottom. Going to look at it from the end. Let's see, the other end, I guess. Here we go. Now I'm going to select this. Notice what we have. Not sure why that didn't go with it, but we can fix that. Okay, Now what I'm going to do, leave edit component mode. Move this one over to here. Before I glue them together, let's just bring the sides in. Make sure this is going to work. Looks good. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to explode both of these. I'm going to get rid of these glue lines. Wood that I could in the shop. And of course, now what I'm going to do, make component. You can't see it down here, but I'm making component. I'm going to call it end. It will complain that I already have one. That's interesting, it didn't complain. Why is that? What is this called? Oh, I guess I called that ends before with an S on it. Well, I don't want ends. I want end. So I'll get rid of that one. Got a naming error there. All right, now I can move this one down. And let's just see. Let's just see if the flip along works. We're going along the red axis. We'll flip it along red. Move it back into place. And there. We have it. Now it's just a matter of using the intersect faces with model and cutting get the pin lines on the front and then erase the lines I don't want. Again, you can't use the push-pull. Let's see, can I use the push-pull? No, you can't use the push-pull. So, it's just a lot of intersect faces with model. What I would do is I would explode this one, do an and then select this and all of this, intersect faces with selection, and then erase the lines I don't want here. And I'd have to do that at both ends. Well, I think I'll leave that to the student to do offline. This video is getting long right now, and intersect faces with selection or with model is not something new. You know how to do that. I'll do mine offline, clean up the model, and we'll pick up and finish this thing off next week. And when we do, next week I'm going to explain what we have when we're all done. That is, what all the angles look like in this model, and what you might have to consider when you're actually cutting this on the table saw or wherever. Because this is a fairly complex model, and the compound miter saw or the compound cuts on a table saw can be a little confusing. Okay, so we'll finish up next week. Until then, have a good week, and I'll see you. Bye.